I was just on social media and I came across a post in which the person was rather hysterically talking about Donald Trump's latest effort to rig the midterm elections. And I only say it was hysterically because the language this person was using was quite hysterical, not because I dismiss Donald Trump's efforts, which have already begun and will continue to rig the midterm elections. I have absolutely no doubt that's what the redistricting in Texas is all about. And anyway, I was reading this post and it linked to an article in the New Republic, which then led me to a Truth Social post by the deranged Orange God King. I'm not going to read this whole thing because it is one of these long screeds. He posted this at 7:17 a.m. Here, let me show it to you here. Here it is. With his signature style of caps and misspelled words and all this crap that you'd expect from a blithering idiot lunatic. So I'm not going to read all of this. Let me read just the beginning here. I am going to lead a movement to get rid of mail-in ballots and also, while we're at it, highly inaccurate, very expensive, and seriously controversial voting machines, which cost 10 times more than blah, 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 blah. Let me skip down here a little bit. What does he say? Okay. By signing, this is how he's going to get rid of mail-in voting and everything else he rants about here. By signing an executive order to help bring honesty to the 2026 midterm elections. Now, of course, anything Donald Trump says, you can take it to the bank that the exact opposite is true. So here he is saying that he's going to sign an executive order to get rid of mail-in ballots and whatever other crap he's ranting about here. Here's what you need to keep in mind. And this is what I've been saying from the beginning, since before he even took office. The way to push back and defy Donald Trump is not through Washington. It's not through Congress. Democrats in Congress have zero power to stop anything. The only thing they have is the filibuster in the Senate, which is only just a rule of the Senate. It's not constitution. I mean, it's not in the Constitution. It's not a law. It's just a rule of the Senate that they could change at any time. The minority does not have a right to filibuster, right? And if they need to, they will completely get rid of it. Republicans have already gotten rid of it for things like Supreme Court nominations. That's how they have been able to ram through Supreme Court nominees, because they got rid of the filibuster for court nominations. And they can just get rid of it altogether. So the point is, Democrats in Washington have no authority to stop any of this. So you have to look to the states. The states have an enormous amount of power in our federal system. It gets overlooked, but people need to rediscover the power of the states and federalism and the 10th Amendment, because that is the way to push back and resist a lot of this authoritarian shit. Now, specifically, with respect to an executive order to dictate how elections are going to be run, to say that the states have to get rid of mail-in ballots. By the way, I'm thinking about this right now. There was another part of this. Anyways, it was in. I'm not going to read all of this to find it. But he says in here. Oh, here it is. This was in the. Executive order part. Sorry, bear with me here for a second. Okay, here's what he says. Right after he wrote about this executive order. By signing an executive order to help bring honesty to the 2026 midterm elections, remember, the states are merely an agent for the federal government in counting and tabulating the votes. That is 100% bullshit. That is completely untrue. The states are not an agent of the federal government in any respect. Now, this is what's important to keep in mind here. If he signs an executive order, the states don't have to do a damn thing that he says. The states control the elections. Now, for federal elections, like for Congress and for the Senate, and to a degree for president, but there is a different process for electing the president. We have the Electoral College, so it's a little bit different. But for federal elections, Congress has authority to legislate how federal elections are conducted to an extent. So the federal government does have authority to regulate federal elections. Now, for the most part, they have not done so. So our federal elections are controlled completely by the states. And if Donald Trump wants to change that in any way, he has to go through Congress. It's in the ability of the federal government to control federal elections to any degree is in Article 1 of the Constitution, giving very clearly Congress and only Congress that power. The president has zero authority. So he cannot cite the power of Congress to pass an executive order. If he wants this done, Congress would have to pass a law. And they're not going to. Congress can't do pretty much anything. There's no way this is going to pass through Congress. I wouldn't imagine. I could be wrong. But unless there is a law passed by Congress saying that mail-in ballots cannot be used in federal elections, then the president has zero authority to prohibit the use of mail-in ballots. So this executive order is null and void because he has no authority to issue it. Now, some of you may be thinking, to an extent accurately, well, that hasn't stopped him before just because he doesn't have authority to do something. He does stuff all the time by executive order that he doesn't have authority to do, and he's doing it. Well, that's true. But there's an important distinction between a lot of the executive orders that he has passed that are illegal and unconstitutional, but yet they have been implemented, as opposed to this executive order. And that is, who is the executive order given to? A lot of Donald Trump's executive orders, he's demanding that something be done, but they're done by the federal government that he controls, the executive branch of the federal government that he controls. So he will issue an executive order that is carried out by one of his departments because they work for him. And then people challenge it in court, and it works its way through the court, and most of those executive orders are still being challenged in the court with no final ruling yet. So it's continued to be carried out because the order is directed to people who work for Trump. And so while he doesn't have the legal authority to do a lot of this stuff that he's done successfully up till now by executive order, he does have the operational control to make those things happen because he controls the federal government or the executive branch of the federal government. However, an order that he gives to the states, he has no control, no authority, no power to implement that executive order. That executive order would have to be carried out by the states who do not work for Donald Trump and have no obligation whatsoever, constitutionally speaking, in our system of federalism, they are not answerable to the president, and they don't have to take his orders. They can literally tell Trump to go fuck himself, shove your executive order straight up your orange ass. That's what they can say to Trump. They don't have to do this. They don't have to give it any effect. They could just laugh at him. And I would suggest that's exactly what they do. They should follow the lead of California Governor Gavin Newsom, who has been just shoving it back in Trump's face, laughing at him. Take his lead, and they should all get on the same page and laugh at him if he signs an executive order like that. Mock him. Ha ha, your executive order is meaningless. We're not going to do what you say. We don't work for you. Go pound sand. That's what they should do. Unless and until It is challenged in the courts, and the courts say, no, you have to follow this executive order. But it's not going to happen. And certainly, unless and until a court, and that's what I've been saying here, that should be, I've been talking about this for months now, that should be the posture of state governors and legislatures and elections officials, anyone who is the subject of a Trump executive order. If Trump tries to tell any state official what to do, they should laugh in his face and not do it. They should just ignore the executive order unless and until it works its way through the courts, and at the end of that process, the courts tell the states that yes, he has this power and you have to follow that executive order. But instead, what we see so often is the exact opposite. That people obey his unconstitutional executive orders and then run to the court and say, please make Trump stop. We don't want to do this. And then they hope that the court will throw out his executive order so they have to stop, so they don't have to comply anymore. That's exactly backwards. Flip that shit. Instead of complying until a court strikes it down, you should ignore it until the courts tell you you have to abide by it. That's what they should do. But Trump has no authority whatsoever to dictate anything about how elections are conducted. He has no control over how elections are conducted unless there is a statute on the books passed by Congress that is federal law. Then the president can implement that federal law. But when it comes to elections, there are virtually no federal statutes governing how elections are to be conducted. They're almost completely under the sole control of the states. And Trump can't change that by executive order. And he can't implement it either. These states would have to voluntarily go along with it. Now, many of you might also be thinking, yeah, well, a lot of these red states will do whatever he says. Yes, that is true. 100% agree with you. You know, you think Greg Abbott in Texas or Ron DeSantis in Florida or whoever else, pick your red state sycophantic fascist governor, is going to tell Trump to go pound sand? No, of course not. They're going to do whatever Donald Trump wants them to. Donald Trump wants Texas to redistrict. Greg Abbott in the state legislature there, redistrict. They do whatever Donald Trump tells them to. And you know what? They can, because the states control the elections. So if they want to exercise control over the elections by doing whatever Donald Trump says and taking orders from him, that's in their prerogative to do. But no blue states for damn sure should go along with this and follow his. No state at all should do it, but we just know that the red states, most of them probably will. But they don't have to. And none of these states controlled by Democrats or, governors who have an ounce of integrity and independence, like maybe Georgia. I can see Governor Kemp not going along with this. In fact, I could see many red state governors that you would expect to fall in line not doing it, but we'll see. But that's what should happen. Trump can order anything he wants. And by the way, while we're on the issue of the Constitution, you know what else is not in the Constitution? Executive orders are not in the Constitution. You will not find that term anywhere in the Constitution. But anyway, Trump has no authority to get rid of mail-in ballots or anything else. And he's going to try a lot of stuff. Like, for example, here in the New Republic article I referenced before, they say this correctly. Trump already unveiled a similar executive order in March, designed to change election rules. It would have barred states from accepting ballots mailed on time but that arrive after Election Day, and forced state officials to require documented proof of citizenship for everyone who registers to vote in federal elections. Such changes would have blah, 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 blah. No, actually, let me not blah, blah, blah that paragraph. Let me just read it. It's important. Such changes would have disenfranchised large numbers of voters. 2 federal judges blocked it this spring after a coalition of states sued, the plaintiffs successfully arguing that it usurped their authority to set election rules. The administration is appealing. Now, when I first posted a video explaining how I believe the states should handle Donald Trump's executive orders, it was in response to that executive order. By the way, back in March, when he did this first executive order trying to dictate to the states how to conduct elections. I said, and you know, people were up in arms about it, and they ran to court. Good, and they got 2 judges to block it. It's still working its way. We'll see how that turns out. I do not expect even this Supreme Court to go along with it. Really, I don't. There is zero constitutional authority for this executive order. But at that time, I said, yes, go to court. Absolutely. Sue the shit out of Trump to block this. But in the meantime, do nothing to obey it. Because this is null and void on its face. You don't have to do a damn thing Trump tells you to do. So anyway, he's going to be trying this, and the states need to rise up. That is where the power is. And I'm tired of people looking to Washington, looking to the Democrats in Congress as a solution to what's going on here. They have no power. And I agree. They have been incredibly weak. Okay, I'm not defending them. There's a lot more they can do rhetorically and to try to throw wrenches in the gears, you know, that kind of stuff. But ultimately, they have no power to do anything right now. We need to change that. We need to empower them by voting overwhelmingly for them and against Republicans. And I don't care how much you may not like Democrats. A lot of you have serious problems with Democrats for good reason. That's irrelevant. Unfortunately, we have this 2-party system. Your choices are a fascist cult in service of a fucking authoritarian thug, or Democrats, whatever problems you have with them. Okay, that's your choice. I'm tired, and I've even read one of these friggin' comments today to one of my videos. Somebody saying, I used to be a Democrat, but I'm sick of Democrats. They're so weak, blah, 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 blah. I'm not voting anymore. I'm never going to vote for a Democrat again. I'm just not voting. Okay, well then you're part of the problem, genius. Okay, stop being so damn childish. That is such a childish point of view. Oh, well, they're not giving me exactly what I want, so I'm not going to vote at all. That only serves to empower this fascist dictator. That's all you're doing. You need to make a choice. That's what being an adult is about. And when one of those 2 people, you know, when one party literally is a fascist personality cult in service of a dictator, you vote against them. I don't care how much you may not like the other party. And you may have very good reasons for not liking them. I don't give a shit. That's the only other party that has a chance of winning in any election. And don't throw your vote away. Oh, I'm principled. I'm going to vote for this 3rd-party candidate, or I'm going to write someone in. No, that's a statement about you. You're a selfish little, everything's about me. Grow up. Your choice is the Republican or the Democrat. That's it. One is a fascist personality cult. The other is not. And that's really all you need to know. Anyway, I'm tired of people expecting in this time right now, with Republicans literally controlling all the levers of power in Washington, to expect the Democrats to be able to do anything to push back against this. The Democrats in Washington. They can't. They don't have the power. But there are Democrats in the states who have power to push back on this. And I have been trying to get people to focus on that for months. And they don't. They just focus and complain about Chuck Schumer. Chuck Schumer sucks. Okay, I agree. That man should not be party leader in the Senate. And Jeffries is, you know, whatever. I don't want to get into, because then you get people defending this person. It's not about personalities right now, okay? The point is, they can't do shit. But there are people, Democrats in power in the states, governors, legislatures, attorneys general, district attorneys. There are lots of elected officials in the states with real power, and the states have enormous power in our federal system. In fact, the states retain most of the power of government in our federal system. Now, the federal government has taken power that is not theirs, and the whole power structure is out of whack, but it's not legal, it's not constitutional. What needs to happen is the states need to take their power back by doing things like telling the president to go fuck himself when he issues an unconstitutional executive order that he has no authority under the Constitution or statutory law passed by Congress to impose. Ignore it. Stand up for yourself. Stand up for your states. Stand up for the Constitution. Tell this rogue dictator that you're not going to obey. The states have the power to do that. We need to encourage our state leaders to do this. And I am thankful, so thankful that Gavin Newsom is finally beginning to do that. I hope other governors around the country follow his lead and do the same thing. Because in our system, it is only the states right now who have the power to stand up and oppose this. When he tells you what to do, you tell him no. And then let him sue, and then you could battle it out in the courts. You flip this whole script on him. What does he do? He does things to other people, and then the other people have to sue, whether it's an organization, an individual, a state, or whatever. Then it goes in the courts, and it drags on for months and months and months, if not years. Use that to our benefit. He issues an executive order, say, we're not obeying. You don't like it? Take us to court, and we can fight about it for the next 3 years. But unless and until at the end of that 3-year legal battle, unless the Supreme Court tells us that we have to, we're not doing shit you tell us to do. That's what needs to happen. By the way, a couple quick points. Shortly after I recorded this video, up to this point, I saw Donald Trump in the Oval Office with Volodymyr Zelensky, and they were taking questions from the press. And Donald Trump was specifically asked about this executive order that he promised in his Truth Social post, where he says he's going to get rid of mail-in ballots, and he went off, as he does, in his authoritarian style, doubling down on this, making clear that he has lawyers working on this, the best lawyers in the country, working on this right now, this executive order to get rid of mail-in ballots, that he and the Republicans are going to do everything they can to get rid of mail-in ballots, and he was going to do this, I guess, by executive order. So he reiterated this. But my point, up until now, that I've talked about here in this video, remains the same. I don't give a shit what he says in this executive order. He has no authority whatsoever to tell the states how to conduct elections. He cannot prohibit mail-in ballots. The states, if they want to go along and follow his lead, yes, they can, but they don't have to. And they can tell him to go pound sand. And one more thing, on this subject of mail-in ballots, I've been clear on this. Even since before the election, I told people, unless you have no other choice, do not vote by mail. And so, while I oppose this authoritarian move on his behalf, that he is undertaking here to try to prohibit mail-in ballots by executive order, I nonetheless continue to advise people, do not vote by mail-in ballot unless you have no other choice. Because mail-in ballots have become so partisan. Overwhelmingly now, only Democrats vote by mail. Republicans, by and large, do not. And so they know that mail-in ballots, no matter what state you're in, will be overwhelmingly Democrat votes. And so Republicans in these states, including in blue states, don't think you're safe just because you're in a blue state, will do whatever they can to throw out mail-in ballots. So you may live in a blue state, but if your local election committee or officials or whoever runs elections in your state, if they're MAGA, they're going to throw out your mail-in ballot if they possibly can. And these mail-in ballots usually have all sorts of requirements. You know, you got to fill out your ballot in such a way, you got to sign it in such a way, you got to date it. If any of that, if you sign in the wrong spot, they're going to throw out your ballot. If you put the wrong date, they're going to throw out your ballot. If they can't read the date correctly or whatever, they're going to throw out your ballot. If you use the wrong color ink, they're going to throw out your ballot. Then you got to take your ballot, you got to stick it in an envelope. You have to seal it in a right way. Maybe you have to sign your name across the seal. If you forget to do that, they're going to throw out your ballot. Then you got to stick it into an outer envelope and seal it up a certain way and write certain information on the outside of the ballot, and on and on and on. If any one of those things is wrong or questionable, they're going to throw out your ballot. So, regardless of what happens with mail-in ballots, if mail-in ballots are an option for you, do not take that option. Unless you have, as I said, no other choice. Voting by mail is better than not voting at all. But if you can vote in another way, if the best is early in-person voting, because then you avoid the possibility of shenanigans on election day. That's the best thing to do. If you can in your area, vote early in person. Do not do mail-in ballots if you can avoid it. Anyway, wanted to clarify some of those things. That's it for now. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll talk to you again soon.